Welcome everyone to our July session of the Korea Peace Study Group, where we are privileged to welcome Echo. Echo works for Women Cross DMZ and has been one of the fearless leaders for the Korea Peace Grassroots Network. And in May, she traveled to Korea and visited many different sites of struggle. And so she's here today to report back on that trip. It was the 10th anniversary of the Women Cross DMZ crossing, where they actually traveled through North Korea and came across the DMZ into South Korea on a peace walk with North Korean and South Korean women who are pushing for an end to this war. So this should be a wonderful presentation, and we're really grateful that everyone showed up tonight. So I pass it off to Echo with much thanks.
You, Jenny, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. So if you joined our June national call, you probably saw like a preview of a short, brief report back from Kathy. But tonight I'm going to do a little bit more in-depth report back, and hopefully it is interactive. That it's not just me talking, but I'm going to ask you if you know certain part of the history that I'm going to cover. And some of the places that we visited. So 10th year for Women Cross DMZ. Thank you, Jenny, for the intro. It was 10 years for us as Women Cross DMZ. 10 years of the crossings. The first picture you see. These women and more people actually do still continue to do DMZ walks since 10 years ago, and we'll probably get into that a little bit later. So for me, it was 18 years since I was in Korea. So first time coming back in 18 years. This is my day zero. I arrived and we happened to have a meeting with one of the South Korean legislators. So this is the capital of what's here in the capital, the legislative building, assembly building in South Korea with Kathy and Youngmi Cho, who's very helpful on the ground, helping us with a lot of things. And we met with Kim Jun-young, and I'll post a link to Kim Jun-young's congratulatory message that he sent to Women Cross DMZ, congratulating our 10th year. And he's very good legislator, especially on the foreign affairs issue. And hopefully he plays a good role in Lee Jae-myung's administration. And yeah, very much in the in the assembly, but comes from activism and really good perspective on foreign policy on for Korea, for South Koreans. And we also visited Ihwa University, where the International Women's Network Against Militarism conference was happening. You see some of the people here in the picture who helped us with our trip in Korea, and also who were part of 2015 crossings, and who are also part of U.S. Activism against U.S. militarism, and also for Korea peace issue. I was really happy to see this banner. Ihwa University is a women's college, and kind of thought as a conservative college, but they had this huge banner because May 18th Gwangju Uprising commemoration was right around the corner. Right, like it happened right before we arrived. And this beautiful architecture, it was my first time visiting Ihwa, and our first banner picture with a few of our delegation. So I wanted to go over our delegation. You probably know Kathy, our executive director at Women Cross DMZ. And the second person here is Marie Berry, who is a Women Cross DMZ board on the board, and also in Inclusive Global Leadership Initiative in University of Denver. She's a feminist and demilitarism analysis, and she works on global women's leadership and peace building, gender, environment, and broadening Korean War narrative with intergenerational impact of war through veterans' experience. Her grandfather, she learned relatively recently, that was in Korean War. Her father was in Vietnam War, so she really brought a lot of good perspective. Also, very good with her students teaching about this anti-militarism. We also had Arash Azizada. He's Afghans. He's with Afghans for a Better Tomorrow, and he's a diasporic leader in transforming U.S. foreign policy. He's Afghanistan. One of the things he mentioned during our trip was that U.S. was in Afghanistan for 20 years, and there were some US people teaching how to count in English using the bullets, and how to like write the alphabet using the bullets. So he was like, he brought in the perspective from his own experience with the Afghanistan people. And Janine Yazi, um, she's a Diné human rights advocate. So I wasn't familiar with the word Diné. Many people know Diné as Navajo. She's also the organization she's with is NDN Collective. And she works with the indigenous rights and land back issues. And then there's me, one of my favorite people I met in Korea, another Cho, last name Cho. And then this is Sonia Jagtani. Jagtani. She's with the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation, which helped us a lot, has been helping us for many years in the past. And she is somebody who will be helping us with the advocacy space and philanthropy space. But just having her there, like energy, you see how she's sharing a bottle of drink with the Korean person she met in South Korea. And then Leah Hong, she's with the Women Cross DMZ. She's on the board of Women Cross, and she's also with the Angel Foundation. And you'll probably meet her more in the down the line. One of the things she works on is combating far right evangelical movement, which is kind of serious in Korea. And the people who are not here in this picture is Yoon Ra, who's a member of Korea Peace Now Grassroots Network, and Yoon's partner Euna, who helped us a lot in Korea and on the ground, and Youngmi Cho, the person you saw in the previous picture, and also Mimi Han, who is with the YWCA, and one of the people who really helped us a lot in 2015 during the crossings. So our day one, CCZ is a civilian control zone, and we went to Yongjukor. So CCZ is in Paju. So Paju is the first place where we lodged, and this is where DMZ border is. It's the western side of South Korea. And the first place we gathered to meet the person who took us to CCZ is this church, which is a replica of a Catholic church that's in North Korea. And the person who was giving us a tour of CCZ and tour of this church was explaining the picture you see is made up of tiles, and these tiles were made in North Korea. And they were brought in, and then they were installed by the South Koreans. So it was collaboration of North and South Koreans working, and the emphasis of this church is reconciliation and peace. The Mother Mary here, the rosary, the part of the rosary which is usually cross is a shape of Korea Peninsula. So this was impressive to me. This was not like an official part of the itinerary, but this was like the first place we met to meet up with the tour guide about this to start our official tour. So Debbie has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say, seeing the paintings up there on the wall, when I was in Kosovo, my Muslim host took me to a Christian church, and it was like that. And I haven't seen anything since like that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So this is the picture of the little booth that we had to pass. We had to give up our IDs in order to enter what's called CCZ, Civilian Control Zone. So this is very close to the DMV area. And only the people, there are residents there. There are people who live there, and only people like our tour guide Charmin is able to enter. With people, like not everybody can enter. You also see that there was a soldier, so it's a Korean soldier, but they also have like UN command patch on the other side. From where we visited, this is the Kaesong Industrial Complex, and this is the Northern Korea part where we were. Like it's like so close. You could like you feel like you can really touch um, North Korea from where we were. And of course, the warrior base and all these signs in English that this is a restricted access area. Like you kind of question it, are we in South Korea or are we in colonized US territory? And the last places, yeah, Ellen. Um, the last place we visited was this fortress that was an old fortress. And a little bit of explanation of the fortress, which is still in CCZ. And this is where we had lunch. This area is particularly famous for beans and soybeans. So they make tofu. This banner was very impressive. The banner says, "If a bowl breaks, it breaks into three pieces. But if the 38th parallel breaks, then we become one." So I really like the slogan on this banner, so I took a picture of this. So CCZ was very symbolic for our tour, and also how like let us know how close we were to the DMZ, to Northern Korea, how close we were. The next place we went, which was about 20-minute drive from CCZ, is Yeongjukgol. So Yeongjukgol is one of the places that still has sex workers working there. So in the old days, it was part of Yeongjukgol was Camptown, so Korean women's sex workers serving to U.S. military, but that part closed down. So now this part is sex workers servicing Korean people. There were a lot of activists who are there because the city and the province or the region of Paju district is trying to close down this region. So the sex workers are working, demanding that the sex work be legalized and that their labor rights be respected. So I thought this was a little bit of complicated issue. It's not directly related to Korea peace issue, but in a way it is. So it's something that I really kind of thought about a lot. Like one of the things that was kind of new to me also gave me a little bit more in-depth thought about sex workers and the connectedness of them and the Korean history. I wanted to bring this DMZ Piece Together website because this is the place where we lodged for 2 nights. If you ever want to do tour of DMZ, or if you ever thinking about bringing a group, so this group visited in March and they still had this banner, and it's actually Georgetown University leader Mina Cho, who's a professor and who's very close friend of mine, a dear friend of mine. DMZ Piece Together has a great lodging. This is the director. And they actually have a peace tour that they offer. So if you ever want to bring a group or consider like thinking about doing a group tour near DMZ, I believe this is the place to go. This is the rooftop where they have this beautiful, it's like if you look that way, if you actually look this way towards left, is Northern Korea. Really great place where we had breakfast together and like debrief and meetings together. So let me know if you're interested in getting in touch if you're ever visiting DMB as a group. So day two, you see young Jean Chong here, Jenny, and even some Korean Americans who were visiting Korea at the time. Gyeonggi Women's Network actually provided this walking and a rally, short rally for us. This is near Pyeongtaek, US base. Pyeongtaek is now the biggest US base outside of the US. And you see there's a flag for a Palestinian and people, students who are supporting Palestinian movement who also joined us. And Suwon women. So I think there were about 100 people that walked together near the Pyeongtaek base. And some of the organizers at Gyeonggi Women's Network who helped us, and our delegation, picture of our delegation. So it was a half day walk, rally. There's Jenny and Leah again, um, which was meaningful. Originally, we thought we were going to do a DMZ walk together with a bigger group, but it was not allowed during the days that we were visiting. It was actually later, like earlier June, later after our Korea trip. So we had to do a smaller walk. So these are some of the pictures from Pyeongtaek Peace Center. So there was a huge struggle from 2006 until 2004, 2006. The people who are living in Pyeongtaek, the residents who are resisting the opening of the US base and the building and their land being taken away. So there was a huge
Well, it was the
resistance.
enlarging of it. That base was already there and it was already damn big when I was there, but it's way bigger now. That's where I was stationed in 1980.
Right. So yeah, Camp Humphreys was there already, but they expanded it and they closed a few of the bases, and then they consolidated and made it really huge.
Yep.
Thank you, Ellen. So now they are so they had to move out of where the bases were, but the Peace uh, Center is still there. And if you ever visit Pyeongtaek, this is the place to visit so that you learn about their struggle. Um, and yeah, it was really hard um, because I think everybody kind of felt like whether we like did enough in 2000 from 2004 to 2006 to help them with their struggle. So I think it was kind of hard for us and hard for the Pyeongtaek peace organizers to share their story too. Yes, Jenny.
When I was there with you, one of the things that struck me so much was the story of a woman who, like like Ellen already said, the Camp Humphreys base was there in Pyeongtaek for many years. And so when she was a young girl, her family was forcibly removed from her land for them to build Camp Humphreys, this old woman. And then in 2004 to 2006, when they're fighting this expansion, she's again moved. So her, as a child, she was displaced. And then her family had to rebuild their lives and their community. And then as an old woman in her 80s, she's displaced again. So just the generational ongoing impact of US military expansion in South Korea struck me. And yeah, just wanted to bring her story.
Thank you so much. And maybe some people are kind of familiar with this picture. What's written on here? Does anybody know? Cindy Sheehan, Code
Oh, yeah.
Pink? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so I first heard about Code Pink, I guess it was 2001, right? Right after 9/11, maybe like a year after 9/11.
Yep.
Because I'm near DC, so I was hearing about how the US government, we were always hearing about Code Orange, that we might get another attack just like 9/11. And then Code Pink people like launched Code Pink. You're always launching Code Orange. We're gonna launch Code Pink. So great group of women, Cindy Sheehan, all now here now, Medea Benjamin and Olivia Dinucci, they're great, and so many other activists working with Code Pink. And I remember them visiting Pyeongtaek in 2006, helping with their struggle and amplifying their message. So I wanted to bring this picture. So the night, so after doing the Pyeongtaek Walk and then the Pyeongtaek Peace Center, we came back to Seoul and had a network meeting at a place called ON. Thanks to Jean here, who introduced us to the venue. It was a small group gathering because we didn't have a whole lot of time to meet up with South Korean civil society organizations. We had to do like several different sessions. So this was first night, meeting some of the civil society. And this is a picture of Kathy's uncle, actually, who is very famous pastor and very famous peace activist in South Korea. So I wanted to share that picture, and Jenny and Kid and Mimi and everybody who joined. So day 3, we went to Dongducheon, which has an old STD building and another networking session in the evening. So who knows about Dongducheon? Ellen, maybe a little bit. Anyone else heard of Dongducheon in context of Korean military base, US base? Okay. Maybe Munjo, you know about Dongducheon. Can you
Yeah.
share what you know?
Um,
What is
yeah,
Dongducheon?
yeah. Dongducheon is located north of Uijeongbu. If you are not familiar with Uijeongbu is about bordering northern side of Seoul. Seoul, to the north, Uijeongbu, and a little bit further to the north, there's Dongducheon City. It's pretty close to the DMZ, and there used to be the U.S. military camp there, and which was closed down when several the military bases around the Korea consolidated to Camp Humphrey. So and then the sex workers, the place Gyeongjukgol this was closed down too. I think there's still the fight is going on to preserve the some sort of check place for historic purpose. That's that much I know.
Yeah, thank you. So there is ongoing struggle to keep this building. So the building is a few slides over. So behind us is this building. So this is the building that these activists are trying to preserve because it is a historical location for this region. So Dongducheon STD testing building, basically, like as Minjo said, there was a US base there. There was a sex workers catering to US soldiers. This was like 60s and 80s. And then these sex workers were forcibly it was mandatory that they do STD testing. And when there were people who had sexually transmitted diseases, they would be going to this treatment center, kind of forced to go to this treatment center, and
detained,
kind of kept.
right? Like they were detained as well.
They were detained there.
They're quarantined, but it's like prison.
Right. While they were getting treated. So this building actually was starting to get a little bit of more media attention, I think starting last year. So the building is euphemistically called Monkey House. So even in Korean media, this word Monkey House it was being used to relate this building. Yes, Debbie.
Sorry, did I interrupt at a bad time?
Go ahead.
I hadn't ever heard of the sex workers as Camptown ladies before, but I remembered from probably my childhood, I just Googled it. There's a song about Camptown workers. And would you like me to try to put it into the chat?
Go ahead and do that, Debbie. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you, Juno, who mentioned that, right? So these ladies were detained. So dark side of Korean history. So I think a lot of Koreans were shameful about this and they kind of want to erase this part of their history. But the activists are saying that's not the way it should be done. We should preserve this building and make it a historical site, maybe make it into a museum so that it's educational and not be just like erasing the part of the history, that it should be preserved and it should be educating the public when they visit this site. So we have Hishin, Choi Hishin, who was one of the main organizers working on this issue. So when we were visiting, it was 271 days. Now it's been over 300 days. And also, if you know Grace Cho, Taste of War, author of Taste of War, was actually there just visiting just now, just like a week ago. So I should have added pictures of Grace being there. But yes, Jenny?
I just wanted to add that it's not just that they were receiving treatment. Like that's a very, very kind way of putting it, right? They were also detained, and also the treatment that they received was not really well monitored, and many people died actually of overdose of treatment. So there's entire fields of people buried who had been detained there. So this is not at all this sort of benevolent thing that it could be portrayed to be or understood to be if you're. And then it's also a problem because there was the comfort women from the Japanese colonial era, and then when the United States came in with their military government, the Korean and the United States top level brass worked together to kind of adapt the system from the Japanese comfort woman system to fit the new era. So it's the ongoing sins of militarism playing out in real time.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Yes, it was so Dongducheon and so Kijicheon is referred to as camp town, sex workers. So Dongducheon, Kijicheon, all these were recently the South Korean court actually recently admitted that this was systematically done by the Korean government. So it was pretty big win for the South Korean activists who've been working on this issue. And as thank you, Jenny, for mentioning, pointing out that it was systematically done, and these people are not just being treated, but they're forcibly detained, forcibly tested twice a week, and the men were not tested. The men were not. It was not mandatory for the men to be tested whether they had STD or not. So yes, thank you.
Tested and treated.
Yeah, tested and treated, forcibly treated.
Yeah, so they would just infect other women. Yeah.
So Juno, if you want to share more about Dongducheon or about the monkey house,
Oh
please.
no. Yeah. I mean, Jenny, everyone said it, but I just thought that, yeah, what you mentioned, Echo, is really important, that the men were not to blame, but the women were to blame. And that is, yeah.
Thank you. So the night is the salt mixer. So we rented this small space, maybe that'll fit like 30 people. And one of the pictures has this free Gaza on the window. So this person who is the owner of the space was very gracious, renting this space for us. And it was a good location for networking. We actually had to stag it to two different sessions because the space was too small and we wanted to meet as many people as possible. So we had a session from like 5:30 till 7, and then another group of people from like 7 till 8:30. So maybe you see some of the pictures in the picture, some people who are familiar, if you are connected to South Korean, and like even Mijin, who used to live here, now living in South Korea, temporarily, part of Nodutdol and part of Korea Peace Now Grassroots Network and part of the adoptee community. So we had a great opportunity and we were kind of connecting a lot of South Koreans. A lot of people were saying like they didn't know about other organizations and other people who are in the organization. So we were very glad that we were connecting a lot of different organizations and people through our network and our space that we provided. So we're in day 4. We flew over to Jeju. And the first place, it was very brief, the first place we visited was Jeju April 3rd Peace Park. So the April 3rd Foundation actually set a formal session for us we were shocked that they prepared this formal ceremony for us to do the bow and to put the ashes and a moment of silence. And Kathy wrote in their book for the visitors, and gave me very different, not a different, but like new additional perspective on Jeju. So this is Jeju, like April 3rd is something I always heard about. If you are like Korean American and if you're a little bit of like progressive Korean, you have heard about piece of this history. But being there at the park and seeing all these pictures, and the reiteration that Korea was under the U.S. U.S. military control when April 3rd massacre happened, this huge genocide that happened in Jeju was really tragic, but also eye-opening, how it reinforces the U.S. imperialism, how the U.S. came in as colonial forces, not as liberating forces. If you ever go to Jeju, I highly recommend that you visit the April 3rd Museum. This is the current chair of the Jeju Foundation. Also, we went to a place called Gangjong after the Sasan Park. Who knows about Gangjong struggle that went on? Jenny, anyone else? Chuck, yes, Chuck. Please share what you know about Gangjong and Jeju April 3rd. If you have, you're muted.
I mostly know about the museum and how amazing it is that all that is recorded there about the struggle that happened on Jeju and the elimination of all of the villages that was done under the U.S. kind of eye, and the bringing in of the Korean troops that were brought in who had been fighting on the side of the Japanese before that time period, and just the brutality that went on. I can't say a lot more than that right now, but that's what I know.
Yeah, so to put it really, really short, so 1945, August 15, Korea was liberated. World War II had ended. US came through the southern, and Soviet Union came through northern, and Korea did not want to be split into two, but because of these two big forces, they were split into two. 1948, South Korea wanted to establish their own government. North Korea did not. There were many people who were in the independence movement trying not to split not to split Korea into two. So there were many activists working very, very hard. But 1948, South Korea started having their own election. So Jeju people, residents, were opposing that South Korea was having their own election. So those people who were protesting, who were against South Koreans' own election, were labeled as red communists. So the U.S. forces and the South Korean forces, under the U.S. Control, they started being massacred. So this went over not only like a few years, but for about 5 years, I believe. It went on until 1953, actually, until the Korean War ended.
They started massacring civilians.
Yes, they started massacring 48, but then it just went on and on. So this picture, this map of all the darker red area is where more people were massacred. The lighter pink is less people who were massacred. 33% were women and elderly. And every house, 1 out of 10 people were basically massacred in the island of Jeju. So nowadays, people know Jeju as such a beautiful place, like vacation location, but the deep history, and the atrocity is really, really heavy. Hong, the Nobel Peace Literature winner, also wrote about We Do Not Part, which was about Jeju massacre. So if you have an opportunity, I highly recommend that you read and learn a little more. Like I don't have a whole lot of time to cover a lot of things today, but if you could please look into the issue. After Jeju Museum, we went to Gangjeong. So who knows about Gangjeong?
I learned about this in conjunction with Jeju massacre. So I Nodoto held a teach-in at Scripps, and so I went there to because I'm not a part of Nodoto, but like I have like friends in the group and stuff, and so I went. And I also know HK put like a short description of the Gangjeong movement or the struggle in chat, but they were essentially fighting against the expansion or the construction of a naval base. Um, and of course, like the concerns were with displacement, this presence of a military that historically, especially in a place like Jeju, where their people were massacred by soldiers, by the military, by the government. And I also know that environmentalist activists came in, because also there was a concern with how the naval base construction would affect the local ecosystems in Jeju. So yeah, and I know it was like a years long struggle as well.
Thank you. Yeah. So the last few pictures I was sharing is the Gangjeong struggle where they were opposing the naval base. The naval base is built, but the people continue to struggle. So after visiting the Gangjeong, the main locations where like almost every day they have Catholic people have mass, and then there were people who like do bows, like 100 bows. And then 12 p.m. there's a human chain rally in front of the naval base. So the struggle goes on. And whenever they have people like us, like outside of the US, who are visiting, they find opportunities to get together, to talk about the issue, to listen to the people, and to educate about the Jeju struggle. So we were there for a day and a half, meeting with the Gangjeong residents who have been in this struggle. The second day we were in Jeju, they had this ceremony called Jonas Whale Sailing Ceremony. So Jonas Whale ship was sailing off from Jeju Island, and they were going to reach Paju, the location where we started our itinerary, official itinerary. It was going to take them a few days, but they were going to sail. And then in between their trip from Jeju-do to Paju, Imjinga, they were going to stop by in several key places. Like one of the places was going to be where Sewol Ferry disaster took place 11 years ago. And there were a lot of students. You see these young people who are part of this rally, and also this guy wearing a pink suit, hot pink dolphins, who's an environmental activist, also was a huge part of Gangjeong struggle. Tries to be in the media, continues to talk about the Gangjeong struggle. And, space industry might be something like some people might be aware of, but maybe most people are not. But these activists are ahead of our time and educating the public about how the dangers of the space industry. And there might be a base that might be built in Jeju for the space, some kind of like space base, working with the space industry. And maybe you guys know Haenyeo, who are women in Jeju, famously known for scuba divers, basically, but like without any gears, even like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, without gears, they go dive deep and then they capture fish, octopus or abalone,
Abalone,
and
they're
then they
very
sell.
abalone. They're very famous for bringing the abalone
Yeah,
up.
singing abalones and octopus. So we were very lucky. We like after the rally, we were using the bathroom, which is like right on the left of this building. We're like, oh, group of Haenyeo. So I just took a picture. And after the morning Jonas Whale sail off ceremony, we went to the Gangjeong Naval Base, which is already built, but they continue to have a rally there. 12 p.m. They call it a human chain. And I wanted to share this. So their struggle is not just rally speech, but it's combination of dance, singing, and people with holding their flags, and people like bring your lunch, let's have picnic together after the human chain rally. So it was really good for me, like as an organizer, to see such an exemplary a way of doing struggles and doing their rallies and continuing to sustain their movement. So I wanted to share a clip of that video from that human chain rally. And after the rally, we went to this place for lunch where even during the hard days of the Gangjeong struggle, um, they were always sharing lunch after the rally. You probably saw him in the previous picture. He's actually the chef who always used to feed people, activists, lunch. He retired, but he came back just to meet up with us. This is Gwen Kurt, who is a member of Korea Peace Now. She used to be San Francisco. I don't know where she lives now, but I think she lived in San
she's in
Francisco.
California.
She's still in California. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was during the hard days of the Gangjeong struggle that a few people from Women Cross DMZ 2015 crosser delegation were in Gangjeong fighting with them. Sorry, this is only in Korean. I forgot to change that. So, other than our official itinerary, I wanted to share a few more pictures because back in May, the presidential campaign was going on. So it was very new to me to see all these pictures of the people who were campaigning. So Lee Jae-myung won. The election happened on June 3rd. He won. These two are the bad conservative. Number two and number four are the bad conservative. And number five, with the Korean Labor Party, it was really hopeful that he like actually ran, and there were a lot of people who were maybe not necessarily voting for him, but they were donating a lot of money to the People's Party, to the Labor Party, supporting him because they didn't want to lose this election to the conservatives. So they voted for Lee Jae-myung, number one, but they showed their support by making monetary donations to number five, the Labor Party. And I was just passing by to go to the Wednesday protest and saw this rally. So I wanted to share a picture of that. There were so many major rallies happening prior to the election, I guess prior to May, because December 3rd last year, Yoon Suk-yeol declared the martial law, and people were having, in the cold winter days, snowy days, people were holding rallies every Saturday, Sunday, every weekend. And I attended, so I had one free day before the official itinerary and one free day after the official itinerary. And the last day happened to be Wednesday, and I never attended the Wednesday protest for the Comfort Woman in person. So this was actually my first ever in person. And this was 1,702nd protest, Wednesday protest they've been holding. So you can see how historical and persistent they were. And just some people who are wearing this vest, I think they're like labor workers. And I don't know why this is blank. So more people I met. Maybe you guys know Pekja. He like became famous singer, movement singer, and Kim Jin-hyang. He was the director of Kaesong Industrial Complex and wanted to end my presentation with this logo, Echo Sarang. So I'm Echo, and Sarang means love. And I just happened to see this picture at a bathroom. It's like, it's a sign. This like bathroom sign is for me. To end it on a funny note. Thank you so much for listening to my long, long presentation. I wanted to share so much from the trip, and I think it just went too long. Thank you. But please, thank you.
Yeah, great,
Let's
great
share.
presentation.
Say it again, Munjo.
Oh, great presentation. I appreciated all your efforts.
So we have time for discussion, questions, to share more about certain things. I wanted to bring more from you, like your perspective or your knowledge about all the historical things that I touched upon. So, yeah.
Well, I'd like to just add a little bit of my experience and, what little bit I know about things. Being a woman, obviously, it didn't directly affect me, but I remember the regular STD checks and how proud the military was of that, like they were protecting the men from those filthy women. It grated me even then, although I hadn't fully grown into my feminism, and I'm very glad the history is being preserved, and it is just a piece of militaristic abuse. It happens everywhere. It's assumed that male soldiers gotta have prostitutes, got to have sex occasionally, and yeah, they'll probably get infected, and it won't be their fault. All that crap that just goes on and on. And it was just part of being there. It's everywhere. It wasn't like the US bases were immune from it. It just wasn't as blatant. And the theft of the land for the huge and increase in Camp Humphreys. I joined the struggle back in the early 2000s. I made donations and signed petitions and, did what I could. Having been there and known it already as a huge, mostly air base, I was in the Army. There were some Army there, but a lot of helicopter people. And yeah, they closed a lot of the DMZ bases, and that's a good thing, but they just shoved them all down to Gwangju. And when I was there last year with Elliot Adams, I asked for, and we did get a day visiting the outside of Camp Humphrey, some of it, and we saw the huge high-rise family housing and a third elementary school being built. And when I was there, you were only there a year because it was unaccompanied. You couldn't bring your family. So, they're digging in for the much longer haul here. And it's just sickening. So,
Yeah. It's a huge town. They even have like Burger King, and I heard that it's like coming into a US small city in the US, like suburb city in the US.
yeah. Yeah, that's the way US military bases are if they get really stuck in like they are now. Yeah. And that is the massive military expenditure we have is the travel back and forth to all those 800 to 1,000 bases all over the world. And a lot of them are way, a lifestyle of normal US lifestyle, not a normal local lifestyle. So they're just horribly polluting and damaging and wasteful, and it's just terrible. And yeah, they steal land right and left and are not careful with the many chemicals and fuel tanks and on and on and on. It's just awful in every way you can think of. Because it's national security, so we don't have to follow any guidelines or regulations or anything. Too bad if we pollute. It's keeping you safe.
Yeah. Yeah, the pollution is really serious. So some of the bases, some of the smaller bases were being consolidated into Camp Humphreys, they were returning the land of the U.S. base, which was also used as a Japanese military base during the Japanese occupation. So it was like almost 100 years of pollution, things that went on that land. Yeah, very serious.
Echo, do you know what the reclamation efforts have looked like, or does anyone on this call know when that land is returned to Korean control? What's been the impact and how are they recovering these sites?
So I think because the Korean government, also Korean government depends on the administration. So Moon Jae-in, like a little bit more progressive, maybe they were better. But then like Yoon Suk-yeol, the conservative government probably were not good on justice for South Koreans. So I know like when Yoon Suk-yeol wanted to go into Yongsan, uh, you know, ditch the blue house and he wanted to move into Yongsan instead of the blue house. There was a lot of huge noise from the civil society, like environmental groups, South Korean civil society groups calling out for the pollution and the danger and all that. But I don't know how much South Korean government is actually taking action or like really like taking the remedy and like demanding the US military on the environmental pollutions and things like that. Probably not, probably very minimal.
Echo, when you were in Jeju, were there U.S. Submarines at the base?
So we were only at the entrance of the naval base. And I heard that frequently, because since Yoon Suk-yeol became the president, he made US's forever dream come true by
Yep.
tying the US ROK Japan military alliance. So since that was accomplished, was it 2 years ago? Almost 2 years ago. I heard that frequently Japanese naval submarine, U.S. submarine, and all these submarines that U.S. and UN command allows comes to Jeju Naval Base.
I think one of the amazing things about Jeju is that, it was dedicated as a peace island, and has an international status ecologically, so that the international community has seen it one way, and the naval base really violates all of that. And that's why the former Pope kind of, I think it was Father, I can't remember the older Catholic priest who's been leading the struggles around the base since the beginning, that he designated that person as his own emissary for peace on the island. And that there's been the Catholic Church and the farmers and the people who've been working there. I think that in Jeju, like, I don't know how many of the farmers, but a great number of them have been in prison a number of times. And when I was there, the farmers had an open tent where they fed all of the protesters on a regular basis. And I know that the mayor, the vice mayor who I got to know there in Jeju, that he had just gotten out of prison. So the struggle in Jeju is a really historic one and has a lot of international support, and that base was a request of the U.S. government that the Korean military would build it as a direct kind of threat to China. So that's why I'm asking that when I was there, they had not completed the base enough, but that we thought that what was going to happen was that the U.S. nuclear submarines would be allowed to dock there and would be kind of a front line against China at that point. So it's an amazing struggle because it's a historic one that involves many of the people in Jeju itself.
What I understand, Chuck, is that the submarines are definitely docking there.
Okay.
That's what I understand.
Yeah.
Just like Camp Humphreys happened, much though we resisted it.
Yeah, so one of the things I felt was that Jeju people were protesting because this is their land. This is their. So one of the activists I met, he said he lived in Jeju all his life, and Gurombi, one of the places that's iconic. He used to go there when he was feeling melancholy, during his like middle school age. When he was feeling sad, he would just go to this place and look at the sea. So he misses those things that were very like ordinary. Now he's deprived of his spot where he, like a forest, you like in your backyard, like you just go there to walk, but he's now deprived of that space. So people they were fighting for their land, but at the same time they were fighting for like bigger, protecting the bigger community, protecting Jeju and protecting Korea from becoming further militarized. So it kind of felt how larger their struggle was, and in a way, like how much we should have paid more attention and we could have done more. We should have done more to extend solidarity with their struggle, but we were not able to at the time.
Mhm.
Thanks for mentioning that, you know, what you just described, Echo. I'm thinking about just the larger regional implications too of base expansion and antagonism towards China, which we can't forget that is a big story playing out behind all of these local stories.
Yes, yes. So regarding the question Jenny raised about the term, how long this U.S. military bases will occupy those pieces of land in South Korea. I remember the mutual defense treaty between the South Korea and the U.S., which was signed in 1953. It was a blank check, literally blank check, for the U.S. According to the agreement, the U.S. can do anything they wanted, because the Lee Seung-man's regime is basically this puppet of the U.S. So they signed the whatever the U.S. wanted at that time, and according to that agreement, this agreement has no expiration date, and those bases have no expiration dates either. They are occupying indefinitely. But there's a termination clause. Either the South or the U.S. can terminate the treaty with a 1 year's written notice. So, yeah, if South Korea has really independent government, they can do it.
Yeah. I don't think Lee Jae-myung would be that government, but I'm hoping that at least he makes a little bit of progress going towards that. I think I'm guessing that almost everybody here in this room know that South Korean war times operation control is still under the US. If a war breaks out in Korea, US takes over. Not South Korean president, not South Korean military. It's the US military that takes over the control. So what kind of sovereign country has that kind of deal, right?
When you control somebody's army during the wartime, and they control the army during peacetime as well.
Mhm.
All the drills going on in South Korea is controlled, it is directed by the U.S. Because the U.S. in the South Korean army is under direct control of the U.S. even for peacetime.
Yeah, at the CCZ, the civilian control zone near Paju, you definitely see, all these US bases in there, in the civilian control zone, where, like civilians cannot enter there unless you have some kind of permission, or unless you live there or something like that. But US base militaries have the right to access.
And I
Yeah,
believe
but nowadays, it is hopeful that with the under Trump pressure on tariff negotiation, they are slowly talking about we should bring back the wartime military control back to South Korea. So I don't think it will be done, instantly, but if we make an issue, over and over again, and maybe during this Lee Jae-myung, administration, something hopeful will happen. Anyway, it was very meaningful for me to join the 10-year anniversary walk. And it was very impressive that ECHO brought many activists, not only for women peace, but there's an activist working for Afghanistan, as well as American uh, Native Americans human rights. So it was very hopeful to meet all your colleagues, and I hope that you come back every year.
I know. If we have the money. But everybody, Jean was part of 2015 delegation. And she's now living in South Korea and heading an organization called AOK, Action One Korea. And she really helped us a lot organizing on the ground things especially for the Pyeongtaek walk and the mixer. Yeah, the 2 mixers we had. Yeah.
Jean, where do you live in South Korea now?
In Seoul?
In Seoul.
Yeah. But in Jeju, I know many activists, not only for working protest in Gangjong village, but they also had a plan to build another airport in
Yes.
Jeju. But they had like a 7-year very, very tough struggle. So it almost, put it down, but I don't know whether the new government will do something in order to build the second airport, but which is obvious that it will be used as a military airport by the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jean, can I ask you a question about also the military base expansion that's happening in Gunsan?
Oh, in Gunsan, I don't know much. I don't know much about in Gunsan.
Okay.
But it is very tragic that all the military base and even the comfort woman system, manipulated by the Japanese, still carried over by the US.
Mm-hmm. Could you share with us too any of the struggles that you're aware of that are ongoing struggles? Because so many of the ones that Echo shared about today are things that, if we had known about at that time, we wished we could have been more engaged, right? So where are the Korean people struggling today in ways that American support of some kind might be helpful?
Yeah, to these days, the struggle in Pyeongtaek, because that's the largest military base of U.S. other than the U.S. continent. And so almost every year, July 27, we go to Pyeongtaek to do the protest. And but more and more, Korean people are aware of the nature of U.S. militarism and the people's sovereignty, because Lee Jae-myung government claim itself, we are people's sovereign government. So I hope that people's awareness about, people's sovereignty over Koreans' own destiny will grow bigger and bigger.
I think that's something that we can, all of us, speak in our communities and our networks about the fact that Korean people have had their sovereignty stripped by US military presence, and that's something that needs to be returned. Thank you for that, Jean.
So there's so many layers to Korean history, from the division, the war, Korean comfort woman catering to US military, the massacre that was conducted not only like with the US backing, but by the Korean police and by the Korean people. And the Pyeongtaek struggle, like on and on, the national security law that's still alive, that if you say anything good about DPRK, if you are Trump, saying, "Oh, Kim Jong-un, I like him," whatever, all the things that he's like, all the good things that he talked about Kim Jong-un. If you were South Korean, you would be in prison because you will be punished by the national security law, according to the South Korean national security law. So those things, continued struggle and how far and far people are kind of detached from the Korean War, from the history, because they were like so busy. They're like all in, you know, I guess, immersed in capitalism. They gotta make money. They gotta save enough for the house, and they're not making enough money, so they have to work 60 hours a week. But like pointing out all these things and like how one thing that I kind of after the trip um been emphasizing to our immediate community members is that like knowledge is power. You gotta know the history. Once you know the history, that is how much more of wider view you will have when you know this history. So I applaud the study group of Korea Peace Now, always educating us and bringing back, all these issues with the clear focus and giving us perspective with all this knowledge inside us, like concentrated in us. Tenzin has their hand up.
Yes, I have a question as you raised about education and knowledge is power. And in the chat, it was just in the chat, someone wrote about forgotten war. I'm wondering, Women Cross DMZ or just any or advocacy organization in the United States, if there are conversations happening about the AAPI curriculum in the states that have passed the bills to increase education on that. Just in June, New York City, they approved a budget for New York City public schools to have for the AAPI curriculum. So for those, like for Korean Americans growing, receiving our education here in the United States, I mean, mentions about the Korean War, um, it's like either a couple sentences or a paragraph, right? And you don't see this narrative that organizations like or like movements like KPN are talking about. So I'm just thinking from a strategic level, and maybe this is something that maybe this is a question for me to ask at the People's Summit um under the media workshop. But I'm just wondering, Echo, if you know or anyone here knows if there's any activity on that front of like um affecting discussions about Korea's history in the AAPI curriculum for the states and cities that have passed the bills to institute that education in the school systems.
So maybe Chunno can share.
Yeah, I only know of this organization, Make Us Visible, currently, because I do advocacy work, especially for ethnic studies in the state of Washington. But it depends upon the curriculum and how it's written, but it's just asking for more resources for curriculum to be designed. So not necessarily of like, and it tends to be of like the AAPI experience in America, but not necessarily American militarization or globalization. So I know that for public education, it might be a bit controversial. I mean, there's multiple sides to the concept and the stories of it. So I just know, so that's one organization, Tenzin. But it's really state by state and legislature by legislature, because that's really how the federal dollars trickle for the Department of Education, is that really it's a state that controls majority of the budgets. And so it's a state's intention.
So here locally, Hamke Center is a branch of Nakasik. And it used to be formerly known as Nakasik, Virginia, now Hamke Center. I know they led a movement with other AAPI orgs on the history on SOL, which is a test that K through 12 students have to take. the curriculum, how Asian American history should be there, and like some of the things that they wanted to modify should not be modified. So that is only a small piece that I know. Tenzin. But like this is one other issue that we have there are so many things we have to do. Educate the public about the unended Korean War and educate the public about the right Asian American history, the right narrative, and yeah, so many things to do.
I'm just wondering, thank you for that, Juno and Echo. And I'm just wondering, maybe this is something for me to ask during an education committee meeting. I'm just thinking about, um, there are people who would go into schools to speak on a topic, like, for example, the Holocaust, right? Maybe a survivor. And I'm just thinking about for, in like the middle schools and high schools, when they're in their history classes and they're talking about world wars and this and that, like this happened in Asia, the Vietnam War, or whatever, about like how do we create opportunities for someone within, whether it's KPN or any advocacy organization, to be able to go into the schools and say something, just kind of share the story and history, because those students are the next generation of advocates for all of these organizations. And and yeah, that just kind of popped up in my mind. Yeah.
Echo, did you get any sense that there is organization on U.S. military bases to do history for soldiers, like we used to do on a lot of U.S. military bases during the Vietnam War, where we had coffee houses where we had alternative history classes? Is that because there's so many um, Americans who are soldiers and have been soldiers in South Korea. Is there any organization? I know Ed Kinchley was doing that work in Japan. I don't know if there's anything like that that's happening in Korea on the American bases.
I don't know, but something I should ask around. Ellen, do you know anything? Veterans for Peace
That
or
would be nice, but I seriously doubt it. The Vietnam era was a special time, and I seriously doubt it's happening now. It ought to, obviously, but I doubt it. Never heard of it.
It would be a great idea and a great opportunity if we ever found someone with those kind of connections and those kind of relationships.
Yeah.
I see it's about a few minutes to the half hour, so if we have one final question, I think we can handle it. But other than that, I think we'll be calling it soon. Did you have follow-up, Chuck?
No, this was great. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank
much,
you,
Echo.
Echo.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea for this, the ordinary citizens can do something about the Korean history, especially around Korean War in the US. So you know, we'll create some pressure on the education sector for sure. I think it's
At the
great.
tribunal next spring, or actually next fall, but anyway, next year, about the many, many, many Koreans who were in Hiroshima and Nagasaki and
Yes.
also were incinerated or horribly injured. That will help a lot. That will be a splash of Korean experience at all. And oh, we didn't just kill Japanese. So that will be an opportunity. It will just be what it is, but it'll certainly break open the concept of other people being hurt. So that's a good thing coming down the pike.
Yeah.
Where's that going to be?
International People's Tribunal.
In
New
New
York.
York City.
Okay.
And
Mm.
it's, I think the date is
November.
set and it's in the fall.
Yeah, it's like the
In
Thanksgiving
November?
weekend of,
That's right.
yeah,
It's in November.
2026
Yeah,
Thanksgiving weekend.
that's right. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, everyone, let's give a big round of applause to Echo for her great work and her presentation and ongoing connections that she's building and a network that she's weaving. And you are all part of that. We're all working together. We can weave together, find our connections, and
Yes, indeed.
keep building a world where, that we want to see, where this kind of domination is no longer acceptable and everyone's voice counts. So we look forward to that. You're part of it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'll be in
It's-
touch about next month's programming. We may be watching War America, but I'm also talking to a few people who may have a presentation. So we'll see how it shakes out. But watch your email for updates, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Echo. Thank you,
Good night,
Jenny.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Echo.
Thank you.
Thank you.